Have our agenda in front of us. Is there anybody who would like to make an amendment to the agenda? Seeing none, would anybody like to move the September 9th, 2024 regular agenda as circulated? So moved by Councillor Albrecht, seconded by Councillor James. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. That moves us on to the consent agenda. Is there anybody who would like to remove anything out of the consent agenda? So seeing none, who would like to move the consent agenda? Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Solium. Any further discussion on that? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. We are now on to our council updates on 5A. So our next regular meeting is September 23rd, followed by October 7th. Both of them, again, will be live streamed. We are doing some renovations to the council chamber, which is why we're meeting this way. And as soon as possible, we'll be back to in person. On 5B, council advisory bodies updates. I just want to check if there is any member of council who has anything they'd like to provide or any committee that they've attended on which we don't receive minutes. Councillor Wallace, I believe you had something you wanted to share.
Yes, thank you through the mayor. I just wanted to invite people to the
Yes, sort of.
the Terry Fox run. Actually, the Terry Fox walk, run, roll, or cycle this Saturday happening at Douglas Park in Langley City. Registration is at 9 o'clock, and the run, walk, stroll, cycle will happen at 10 o'clock. So just wanted to invite the public out to that, and council and mayor and anybody who's on tonight if they would like to come up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any other member of council with an update? So I am seeing none. So that moves us on to item 6B. So this is bylaw 3291, zoning amendment bylaw. We have this for Michaud Crescent, 20220 to 20230. I'll just ask the corporate officer if the statutory notice requirements have been met on this.
Yes, Mayor Pahal, the statutory requirements have been met.
Perfect. And with that, hopefully our Director of Development Services, Mr. Johansson, can give us a brief overview of this proposed bylaw.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the audience. Yes, this application is for a rezoning, zoning bylaw amendment and development permit application for a 6-story, 64-unit apartment building at 20220 and 30 Michaud Crescent. This application also involves tenant relocation. There's 4 eligible tenants on site that will need to be relocated if the application is approved by council. And tonight we have the applicant and their architect in attendance to do a presentation on the proposed development and also the tenant relocation plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johansson. And just for clarity, is this in the provincial TOA area, TOD area, sorry?
Yes, that's correct. This property is located within the transit-oriented area, or TOA area that was designated in the city as a part of Bill 47, the new provincial housing legislation. And in that legislation, in the interest of promoting more housing development near SkyTrain and rapid transit, municipalities are not permitted to require residential or visitor parking within TOA areas other than accessible parking spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, I think we can turn it over to the applicants or applicant as architect for a brief presentation. So I'll turn it over to your team.
Good evening. I tried to share the screen.
We can see your desktop.
Thank you.
And the PDF, we can see it. Thank you.
Everything's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good to go.
Thank you. Good night, good evening. My name is Matthew Chang of Matthew Chang Architect Incorporated. Although OCP and TOA permit high-rise and higher FAR, my client has chosen to develop this project into a 6-story wood frame apartment with 2.71 FAR, with 1 level of parking, half a story underground, and another level of parking, half a level above grade because of bad soil condition. There are 64 units, apartment units, with 78% 2 or 3 bedroom and 21% adaptable units. The immediate context is Mitsui Crescent to the north, a multiple family to the east, a lane to the west, and also a lane to the south. The vehicular access will be from Mitsui Crescent via the west lane to the south lane and enter the parking by up and down ramps. The total number of parking space in underground and level 1 is 64 plus 3 accessible spaces. With under TOA, although in under TOA, 0 parking is required and only 3 accessible parking are needed. All parking space will be pre-wired for future EV chargers, and 6 EV charging stations will be provided. 1 loading space is provided off the south lane. The residential entrance is located at the northeast corner. On level 1, there is a single loaded corridor of ground-orientated unit facing Mitsui Crescent and the west lane to provide more space for parking on level 1. On July 3, 2024, an advisory design panel was attended. Our office has revised the design according to the comment from the ADP. The changes on level 1 have included the bike lane has been relocated from the street side to close to the building entrance lobby. Building office has been removed and the building entrance lobby has been redesigned and modified. Stairs to ground floor unit facing west lane has been removed to avoid conflict with the lane traffic. Wall next to the ramp to underground parking has been replaced with picket railing to improve the sightline. On level 2, the apartment will be changed to a double-loaded corridor. Indoor amenity space will be located with interfacing outdoor amenity space on top of level 1 parking structure. Regarding form and character, the building is an L shape facing Mitsui Crescent and the west lane. The form will maximize density and screen the parking area behind. Regarding ADP comment of the form and character, the roof line has been modified. Extruded balcony has been extended at the bottom of the feature, and the stairs of ground floor unit facing west lane has been removed. The building entrance is located at the northeast corner. It is elevated and is accessible by a ramp. Also, the entrance door is transparent for the septic reason. To respond to the ADP comment, more glazing has been provided on the sidewall of the building entrance. This image from the south lane shows the above-grade parking is screened by the L-shaped building. Underground parking and level 1 parking are accessed by separate ramps. The outdoor amenity space is located on top of level 1 parking structure. To respond to the ADP comment, extruded box structure features in tan color has been proposed on the rear elevation, similar to the front elevation. The wall next to the ramp to the basement has been replaced with picket fence to improve the sightline. The ceiling height will raise to 12 feet on the top floor from unit facing Missouri Crescent and the West Lane, which will create a stepping effect to the east wrapping area. To respond to the ADP, a parapet has been proposed to the turning corner of the L-shaped building to articulate the corner better. The elevation is designed with a base, middle, top concept. The base is composed of painted gray concrete patio with first two level cladded with facing brick. The bricks are interrupted by base cladded with gray fiber cement board. The middle portion is predominant white fiber cement board, which are broken up by gray color base and are further decorated by the warm extruded frame features. The top is muted in shade, partially set back and finished with a prominent cornice. To respond to the ADP comment, the roof line has been modified and the 10 extruded balcony features has been extended at the bottom to make it like a C-shaped feature. In terms of the color palette, it is a white and gray fiber cement board for the major area, dark brown bricks, painted concrete patio, wood grain color, metal soffit, and 10 color fiber cement for the extruded frames. Regarding sustainability features include the light system to meet the dark sky and light pollution requirement, 25% above National Energy Code, reduced heat island effect by landscape courtyard, drought-tolerant landscaping, water conserving, toilet, EV chargers, and providing garden pots, etc. Regarding SEPTEC, we'll be including the parking and building entrance equipped with CCTV and fob access. Parking wall will be painted in white and well illuminated. Parking elevator enclosed with half-height glass and the building entrance with full-height glass to increase visibility. Trees on ground floor are chosen not providing concealment to offenders, etc. This finished the architectural presentation. I will pass to the landscape architect.
Thank you, Matthew. Hi, everyone. My name is Ewan from PMG Landscape Architects. Happy to be here to present landscape. So the overall landscape concept for this project is trying to create lush green for this site. So we can see on this plan along the north edge and the west edge, we create landscape buffers. So by understanding the site has been raised higher than the sidewalk, the landscape buffer like evergreen shrub has been proposed here to cover the retaining wall there. Almost each unit along this two edge having one tree. And each unit we are proposing the large patio size. So the residents can using the patio for the barbecue and the picnic table for the picnic and the other programs. Next page, please, Matthew. Yeah, so this one is showing the shrub plan for that. Next page, please. So on this plan, we can see the outdoor amenity area. The outdoor amenity area have basically 4 zones from the north to the south. At the north end, that's community garden, and then that's a playground, and later that's the picnic area, and at the south end, that's the lunch seating area. So the playground has been located next to the indoor amenity area, indoor amenity room, which is we're trying to keep it far away from the residents' unit to keep them quiet. In the play area, we propose 3 the play piece, and we're trying to offer numerous programs and allowing multiple kids to play at the same time. In front of the private unit, we have the raised planter to create a privacy and buffers for them. So the overall site, we have 9 replacement trees are proposed. All the planting and shrubs are low maintenance and drought tolerant. So that's all for landscape presentation. I will pass it back to Matthew if you have anything you want to add.
This ends our presentation, and we are welcome for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'll see if council has any questions about the presentation. So we will start with Councillor Albrecht.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pahal, and I just wanted to, as chair of the advisory design panel, I just wanted to thank the developer and his team for addressing the issues that we raised and the improvements that we thought could be done and incorporated into the building. So really appreciate you working with our staff to come up with a proposal that should be acceptable to the community. Thank you.
Is there any other questions of the presentation from council? I am not seeing any. Okay, Councillor Mack, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Through the mayor, I just had a question for the applicant. I'm not sure if they're able to answer, but I was wondering how many tenants are there living in the building, both in legal and illegal suites, and how many tenants are included in the tenant relocation policy or plan?
Actually, my client or the owner is in a meeting, so maybe I could pass it to him to answer this question. Now, ma'am.
Yeah, that would be great if we could get an answer for that. And I think that the comments that I wanted to express predominantly surrounded the tenant relocation. From my view, there's a small amount of units with potentially long-term and vulnerable tenants, and we are getting 64 units on the same size lot. My concern is that we don't have the individuals that are currently living there left in a lurch, so to speak. I do understand that the applicant is adhering to our previous policy CO81. However, it is my view that the compensation in CO81 is not enough. Hence why council updated this policy in policy CO84. So I think what my personal suggestion would be for the applicant to review the compensation that's being offered, because the reality is that CO81 I do feel is inadequate to address the needs of those that are displaced because of redevelopment. That's my main concern, and that's what I wanted to express.
Thank you. And I believe the tenant relocation coordinator is here and may have some slides to present to us.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Shweta Kapoor, and I am tenant relocation coordinator for Elegant Glass Holdings, the developer, for the project 20220, 20228, 20230 Michaud Crescent. So to start, can I share my screen?
Please.
Yeah.
I think the architect may have to stop sharing his screen.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I'm having some problem with sharing my screen.
Does Langley City staff have the slides that we can share?
Yeah.
Mr. Johansson, is there anything that you can provide or?
Yeah, if the, yes, Mayor, if the tenant relocation coordinator can't get the slides up, I believe we have a copy of that. I think Anton might have it, could share it.
Yes, just one moment.
Thank you.
that up?
Yes, we can see it. So maybe you can walk us through those slides and then you can just tell us when you want to have them advanced.
Okay, so on the next page, yeah. Yeah, so the purpose is to guide the relocation and compensation of the residential tenants who are currently living there in the building. So starting from the, can I have the next page, please? Next page, please. Yeah, so there are total 8 tenants living on 3 addresses. 20220 has 4, 20220A, B, C, and D, and 20228 has A and B. 20230 has A and B. So only we are communicating with the affected tenants. Those are residing in 20220C and D. I have marked there in red. So 2022C and D, and 20228B and 20230A. So rest one unit is vacant, that is 20228A, and 3 are there are new tenants. So we have already the developer has already signed the agreement mentioning that they are going to demolish the building next year. So the only the agreement is for 1 year. So currently we are dealing with only 4 tenants.
Perfect. Is there more that you wanted to provide at this time anyways?
Currently, we offered them for the additional 2 months, apart from the what is in the compensation provided by the Langley City. But we are giving additional 2 months. But we have already informed them that it will be they can avail it if they can sign the early vacant agreement with us. So we have not heard anything yet, but 2 of them, they are quite willing to move in the beginning of next year. And one she doesn't want to move in winters. So, and another is he's having some problem with the parking issues, so he doesn't want to move in the apartment, and he's currently residing in a 2-bedroom and looking for the similar, but not in apartments. So, but none of them have found it yet or mentioned like when exactly they want to move, so I can help them. So in every meeting I just tell them like if they let me know when they are planning to move, then I can talk to other landlords so I can find a place for them.
Thank you. And just a note, your audio is a little bit non-optimal. So I don't know if the mic is, it sounds like you're outside and it's windy. And I know you're not.
I am in the room right now, but maybe it was
Oh, that's better.
yeah.
Yeah, that's way better. Thank you.
So do you want me to repeat anything?
I think maybe you can just repeat the folks that have been, I mean, maybe you can summarize. There were 8 tenants, 4.
Yeah, so
or-
8 tenants, and we are dealing with 4. 1 unit is vacant right now, and 3 units. So 3 units we are they are new tenants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you're working on,
them-
there's 3 tenants that you're working to relocate
No, no,
right
no,
now, or
4.
4? Or 4, okay. And 2 you said are possibly looking to sign an agreement with you now. Possibly one is looking to move in the new year, and then the other person is looking for a 2-bedroom unit.
2 tenants are willing to move in New Year. One she doesn't want to move in winters, so maybe she'll wait until spring. So, and one is still finding the place, but he has more or less parking issues because he has a boat, a big pickup truck. So he doesn't want to move in an apartment. So, and moreover, they haven't informed me like when exactly they want to move out. So I can find out a place for them. I can talk to some other landlords or the buildings where they can find a place. Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
but two of them, they are very much like willing to move out in December, in January.
Thank you. So we'll see if Councillor Mack has a follow-up question.
Mhm.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I just wanted to clarify. So in addition to the compensation in policy CO81, our previous policy, you're offering 2 months rent in compensation for people who are willing to move out in the near future.
Yeah, so we have already given them, announced the additional 2-month compensation eligibility to them, to all of them. So, like they haven't confirmed it yet, but we already informed that if they will sign an early vacant agreement with us, then they are eligible for that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. I don't know who to address this to. I think probably best addressed to Mr. Johansson. Thank you. It says in the OCP section of the application that according to our policy 1.16.1, that the new development must replace any existing purpose-built rental of units at a 1-to-1 ratio. So it goes on to further explain that there were only 2 purpose-built units on the property. Is that correct? I'm just trying to get some clarification.
So Mr. Johansson.
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor White. Yes, there's 2 duplexes. One is strata and one's purpose-built rental. So duplex per property. So that's where the 2 units for replacement come from. But there's 4 illegal units being rented. So across the 2 properties. So it's a little bit complicated in that regard. But in terms of the OCP policy, there's only 2 actual purpose-built rental units that need to be replaced. So those are going to be included in the new building, and a housing agreement will be brought forward to secure those units. Now, the way we handle tenant relocation is if there are tenants in the building, in terms of occupying the units that are there on site when the application is made, then all those tenants need to be relocated and compensated. So that's why there are 8 units in play, but at the time of application, only 2 of those were actually vacant. 2 tenants in 1 unit each were actually ordered by the RTB to vacate. So that's why there's only 4 eligible tenants to be relocated and compensated.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just a follow-up question. So were like in 2017, and when the property was purchased, obviously at some point these illegal suites were put in. I'm not sure if they were already pre-existing when the owner bought them, or whether or not they developed afterwards. My question at the end is, this is hard for me to reconcile because here we have tenants who have paid rent and a owner or landlord who has obliged and had a tenancy agreement with them. And so it seems like there's benefits that have been received on behalf of the owner, but in terms of, and I understand our policy is such that we agree to have a one-on-one replacement, but only on purpose built. But we still have people who I think is actually entitled to some tenant protection here. And although it's a policy that says one-on-one, there's 4 tenants that have been paying rent for at least a period of time that the owners had them. So I'm wondering whether or not we need to review that. For me, that's something I would like to see on the new proposal that's coming forward, that there's actually 4 units that are set aside as rental units, not 2, which would leave the remaining 60 units as condos and a total of 4 rental units. Now, I know we have a policy and a stated policy regarding this, but I think we're into some real gray area here. And I just think that in the end, there are tenants that, and we're looking ahead at removing two rental units from market here as well. So anyway, those are my concerns, and I'm thinking that I'd like to see some kind of maybe more dialogue around this. Thank you.
So I think for staff clarity and kind of getting away from the application here a little bit right now, but our policy is to sort of the purpose-built rental market, and I think we're pretty conscious in not doing a tenant protection policies for strata or for folks that say may rent in a single family home or a basement suite or something like that. It can get challenging, I think, in the policies on properties that have the flexibility of being market or rental. So I guess, Mr. Johansson, like we have a lot of strata buildings. If there was a strata building, like say I lived in a strata building where you were allowed to have folks rent, if a strata building was up for redevelopment, that wouldn't be covered by the purpose-built policy because that building could be market or could be purpose-built. So I think that's the thing we need to be kind of mindful of on a council there. It could be very challenging to administer that. So I think we landed on purpose-built because that was sort of the institutional buildings. When it comes to, and we'll get to the part about the folks that are living there today. But for example, if someone has an illegal secondary suite in Langley City and the city becomes aware of it, they have to remove that illegal suite or bring it up to compliance. So I suppose, the question, Mr. Jansen, for you is like the city, once we became aware of the illegal suites, what action did we take, or is there an action we take?
Yes, through the mayor. Yeah, so just delving into comments and questions there. Yeah, the policy is with purpose-built rental exclusively because of the need to replace rental stock over time. The strata rental, the province has the Residential Tenancy Act that handles that and has policies and requirements behind that. So that's something that as from a policy basis in the OCP, when the OCP was developed, the policy emphasis was on the purpose-built rental. And the difficulty is that, there's buildings out there that unfortunately get converted from, 2 to 4 to 6 or whatever. There's illegal suites created. We don't know when they're created. Sometimes the owner buys into a situation, and we address it through the policy that we have. But we also make sure that if there's tenants living in there, if it's 4 units, but it's supposed to be 4 units, but there's 8, we make sure that the developer is going to relocate and compensate all 8 of them, so they're not penalized for living in an illegal situation. So yes, there's I think that would be a difficult enforcement task to go after illegal suites. I think in this case we're focusing on making sure that tenants are being relocated to suitable housing and compensated, and we're producing more housing. So sorry, Mayor, what was your last question or comment?
I think that was about it, but the follow-up is the folks that are the current 8 tenants, are they offered the right to return?
Yes.
Yes, okay. That's good. So if all 8 wanted to, the applicant would have to provide 8 units to them if they chose to rent it out. Okay. That's good to know. So before we get to Councillor Mack, I just want to see if Councillor White has any follow-up.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. No, I appreciate your comments, Mr. Johansson and Mayor Pahal. And I do again want to just express appreciation on behalf of or towards the developer for the relocation package being extended to all tenants within the units. I think that's very important to do. I think I would probably still fall a little with Councillor Mack's comments regarding, the cost of that, but I understand that this application was put in at the previous council policy, CO 81, and so I appreciate that that's been extended to all of the current tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get back to Councillor Mack, just wanted to see if there was any other member of council with question or comment. I'm not seeing any. Councillor Mack, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Through the mayor, I wanted to acknowledge some of what Councillor White was saying, because I believe it was stated in the slide, or I believe it's stated in the slides that this building was purchased in 2017. So at that time, I'm assuming that the illegal suites were in place, which is fine enough. They offered units of housing with it, which I think is an advantage, but I do think it demonstrates that the reality is if the city had been aware of these illegal suites, they would have had to come into compliance or individuals would have had to vacate. That is an indicator of and as an example of not complying with city policies. However, when it comes to the 1-to-1 replacement ratio, this application is strictly adhering to that policy. So my suggestion would be that you have, I guess it would be 4 rental units that the owner has benefited from since 2017. It is important that we protect our rental stock. So I would like to see, hopefully at second reading, the offering that I'd like to see the amount of 1-to-1 replacement be increased to 4 to acknowledge the illegal suites as well, which they benefited the building owner at its current state. I think that I would have a different perspective if they recently acquired the property, or if there had been additional communication with the city to bring those units into compliance. But because it was kind of quiet, kept under the radar until this application has come forward, I think it's fair to treat them as operating rental suites.
So I just want to check if the applicant has any comments on that. So no comments from the applicant on that. Okay.
The developer to talk about this one.
Is the developer here?
Yes, he's unmuted already.
Okay.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, somehow my camera is not working. Yeah, my name is Namanmeet Singh and I am the owner of the property. Yeah, I purchased this property back in 2017, which was 8 units at that time. And I was not aware that time when I purchased it was illegal suites were there. So which I have recently find out when I was applying for the permit and application to the city. So yes, I have included 2 units for the rental units, 1 bedroom and 1 bedroom and den, which is I have offered to there's two tenants which they are already agreed to the tenant relocation, that they will move out next year, which is once the winter will go, and they verbally they accepted. We offered them the benefits and the moving thing, but two vulnerable tenants they said they will one have an issue because they were living there for many years, and she said she will move out and in the beginning of next year, of course, after winter. And the one tenant, he has issues because he has two vehicles, one with the boat and one big pickup truck. So that's kind of he is more concerned, and he doesn't want to move into the apartment, which I offered him one thing, which I'm going to bring it up in notice. If he wants to come back to the building as a tenant, I can still offer 10% less than the market rent. Yeah, I have offered. One day I was on site and he asked me, so then I personally offered him that I'm willing to do that.
Okay. Is there any other comments you have?
Other comments is being market is too tight, and the things are not moving in apartment buildings, so interest rates are so high, which I would want to be stick to the policy. If it's one strata policy we have, we should be building a two rental units. Rest should be market rental. As the two vulnerable tenants, I offered them, and I want to give them on the 10% less than market rent. Other two, the tenants one is on the market rent, one is a little bit less on the market rent, which is they still we can find the market rental suites for them because they're on the market rent.
Okay. Did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Cool. So we'll go to Mr. Johansson and then Councillor Mack, just in case Mr. Johansson had some comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just briefly on the topic of the rental units and the units on site. Until the applicant made an application, we wouldn't have been aware of the illegal suites. So we're applying OCP policy and bringing that forward in terms of replacing the purpose-built rental units that are actually on title in terms of it being a rental building versus a strata building. So we're following that, and we're bringing that forward in terms of being consistent with the OCP. If that's something that council wants to review with the OCP, that's something that we would need to do and amend the OCP. But in terms of this application, that's the approach that we took, and we wouldn't have known if these units were illegal until the applicant came forward with an application. And we're not letting them off the hook in terms of having to compensate and relocate all the tenants. If there was 8 tenants on site when they made the application, they would have to compensate and relocate all 8 of them, regardless of the previous status of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Through to the applicant, I wanted to just reinforce, I do think that it is somewhat problematic that there was a benefit received from 2017. That benefit was in contradiction to our policies. However, when an application has come forward, there's a more convenient policy by my view. I do believe that if you had, it appeared that there was a willingness to, on a one-to-one policy basis, when you applied, potentially offer 4 replacements for the 4 rentals that are purpose-built rentals. So I'm just not really, I'm not seeing eye to eye with why there isn't 4 being replaced. It seems more convenient with the policy now, even though there was benefit received prior.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So I see if there's any other comments from council to the applicant. So I'm not seeing any. I guess the last words I would say too is, if this does actually get, final reading and a development permit, it's really important to be aware of where you're working. It's already a very busy, active area. So, you'll need to make sure that you have you found parking for trades? That's something that we look for. I know folks say they do, and then they end up parking on the street, which creates problems for community, being a good neighbor for cleanliness. I know garbage gets strewn all over the place. I see that in the project under construction right next to me. And then obviously making sure that you're following proper city policies, making sure you have building permits and the like before you do works on your property. Really important that you do your due diligence there. So with that, we do have a motion in front of us. The recommendation is that the bylaw cited as zoning bylaw 1996, number 2100, amendment number 211, 2024, number 3291 be read a first and second time. Is there a mover for that? So moved by Councillor Albrecht, seconded by Councillor Solium. Is there any further comments on the bylaw? So seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is there any opposed?
Opposed?
So it's opposed by Councillor Mack and it's opposed by Councillor White, so it's carried. That brings us on to item 6B, so that's bylaw 3288, zoning bylaw amendment 208, development permit 0423, so it's a third reading. It's that the bylaw cited as zoning bylaw 1996, amendment 2100, amendment 208, 2024, number 3288 be read a third time. Is there a mover on that? So moved by Councillor Albrecht, seconded by Councillor James. Any further discussion on that? So I'm not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is there any opposed? None opposed, I assume. So that carries unanimously. That puts us on to the Crime Prevention Committee report. And so we'll turn that over to Councillor Albrecht.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for your patience. Getting everything all in order here. So Crime Prevention Committee is looking at, well, I'll just read the recommendation and I can go into it. So that council provide $1,625 in funding to the Crime Prevention Committee to purchase 500 529 bike shield stickers to promote bike security in the community over the next 12 months. And I'll move that.
So it's seconded by Councillor James. Is there any further discussion on that? Did you want us, sorry, we're not voting. This is about if there's any further discussion. So Councillor Solium has discussion. Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
just use the raise your hand function. It helps me.
I don't see it on my Zoom for whatever reason. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, no, never mind. I found it. But yes, just I'm just kind of curious, what exactly are the stickers going to be saying on them?
So maybe Councillor, did we lose Councillor? Oh, there you go. Councillor Albrecht, maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Councillor Mack is my co-chair, so she could add some information. But essentially, this is a tracking program for bike theft, and bike theft has actually been reduced. I think it's 40% with the effectiveness of being able to track and get these bicycles back to their owners by having this registered program with all the police. Actually, it's spreading throughout North America, and the program is called 529 Bike Shield. And it's like I say, just a methodology of tracking, monitoring, and getting bicycles returned that have been stolen. Councillor Mack, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Albrecht. So the sticker itself is tamper-proof, which is really beneficial because you can adhere it to the actual metal body. It has a QR scan code that when you scan it, it actually brings you to an app or to a web page that talks about the description of the bike. And basically what it is when you get this registration, you can download the app, you sign up, you give your contact information, you have photos of your bicycle, and it's an identifier. And then the strength in it is that if your bike is actually stolen, you can go and punch in the app that it's been stolen, and it sends a push notification to everybody else in the area that uses that app. So what you have is, in addition to calls for service, like in addition to actually calls to the RCMP, you have this group of passionate, avid bike users that are on the lookout for your bicycle that are in your region. So it kind of is a really good mitigating measure, because what they've found is that the vast majority of bicycles that are stolen now, because people who are involved in, this crime are now aware of the network that are watching these stickers, and aware of the network for the people that adhere to the 529 or Garage 529. So they actually don't steal those bikes, generally speaking. They typically go onto bikes that are unregistered. So it's actually reduced those bike thefts quite substantially. In terms of how we wanted to actually use the stickers, we have been doing a bike valet, as you guys are aware, and what the intention is to integrate it into our communication with residents. Use it, number one, as a promotion to actually get people to bring out their bike to the bike valet, but then when you have that point of contact with them, to promote free registration, because these stickers are otherwise normally $14.99. You can typically buy them from the bike shops, but it ultimately reduces a barrier to entry. It makes it easy for people to register. And then I think the thought from the Crime Prevention Committee, and I mean, for me as a member of council, is that overall, if we get more people registered, more people using the service, it will hopefully reduce, and actually it'll mitigate instead of responding to bike thefts, which hopefully will reduce our calls for service. And obviously, these stickers are much less expensive than RCMP officers. So that's the whole rationale behind it from my perspective.
Perfect. Anything else, Councillor Mack, on that? Or perfect, Councillor James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was actually asked and answered by Councillor Mack. Appreciate that. When is the next bike valet scheduled for? Like probably not until 2025 in the summer, right? Okay, so you're trying to get activating this so that you have it and it's all in place for the next time there's a bike valet? Because I'm impressed. My question was going to be, when are you, how do we get this out to the community? But obviously the bike valet is the perfect opportunity, but is there going to be any more communication? Because I know we're big on communication right now. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if I could jump in, Mr. Mayor, we've got block watch programs, we've got know your neighbor programs. There's all kinds of, let's say, community opportunities where we can get this word out there and get that advertising. That's part of the plan with the Crime Prevention Committee. Is we go to a lot of events, like we'll even go to the Magic of Christmas event and have a table set up, and we can provide that kind of information in detail ahead of time. So we want to get this rolling out as soon as we can, and hopefully build on it and really bring awareness when we have the bike valet service.
Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Albrecht. I really appreciate this. I am fully supportive of it, obviously, and I really like the idea of your communication strategy. So thank you for your answers.
Perfect. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, and I believe it was moved and seconded, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. That's on to administrative reports. 8A, Solid Waste and Organic Collection Services Contract Award. So I will turn it over.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pahal. I just share my screen here. I have a quick presentation. Just querying if that's now
Yes, we
visible.
can see it. Yes.
Thank you. So thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a quick presentation on the recommended award for the contract for residential solid waste and organics collection in the city. Now, my slide is not moving. Oh, here we are. So maybe I could start off first of all by speaking to the existing contract. The contractor at the moment is Mterra. They've had this the contract in the city for well over 10 years. This contract comes to an end at the end of 2024. The level of service in the current contract is their bi-weekly garbage, weekly organic collection and the land uses are single family, duplexes, and multifamily. It is manual collection, so the residents supply their own containers and the material is lifted by the crews into the trucks. And there are also a number of, I think, 8 civic facilities that are included. Tipping fees are about $315,000 to $16,000 a year. These are extra to the contract itself. It means that the city bill gets invoiced directly by Metro Vancouver and also answer that process the organic materials. Under the current contract, the annual cost for collection is around $510,000, and that's comprised of about 3,270 units at about $156 per unit. Recycling is not part of this contract. Since 2015, curbside recycling has been undertaken in the city by Recycle BC, who is the stewardship program, and their contractor GFL. So that is not included in this upcoming contract either. Staff had a discussion with council earlier on this year around what the level of service would be for a new contract. And outlined here are a number of the elements that were considered. A number of these are actually the same as the current contract. The 2 areas that are largely different is the vehicle configuration. So it's going to a semi-automated collection system, and also asking the proponents to consider alternate fuels. So it could be CNG, could be biodiesel, or electric. And also that the contract will supply and maintain the carts or the totes. And there's a range of totes available from 120 liters all the way up to 360. These following items, the additional services are also included in the current contract: large item pickup, the annual household hazardous waste event that was run in conjunction with the township, and the civic facility. So in this case, the hazardous waste event has now been included as a city-only event. So having set the levels of service, staff prepared an RFP document that was posted on BC Bid in June of this year and closed at late July. There were 2 submissions entered, one from Intera, the current contractor, as well as GFL. Both of these are well-qualified, very competent companies. The submittals were evaluated by a multi-departmental team from finance, operations, and engineering, and there was the evaluation was based upon multiple criteria. Out of that, the selected proponent was Mterra Environmental. The contract rates. This slide gives some information on both the existing contract and the proposed contract. As I've previously stated, the existing rate is about $156 per household. Under the new contract, that would be $309, and that is a projected number because whenever we created the RFP document, we assumed a number of houses that we currently have on file, but that will vary a little bit by the time we actually execute the contract, and it will vary every year. So we just wanted to, that's why we use the term that it's projected, that it'd be $309, and that would include the large items and the hazardous waste, household hazardous waste. The cost to provide 2 totes or 2 carts to every household is about $154. So the intent is to spread that cost over the duration of the contract over 7 years, which would equate to $27 per household. The proposal from Mterra was that they would maintain the existing contract until the end of April in 2025. The reason being that allows for a very orderly transition to the new system. Otherwise, we would be looking to do this right around Christmas time, which is our busiest time of the year. And it's also, you run the risk of inclement weather, and it gives the contractor time to work through some of the bugs and get this out in the beginning of May. So as I said before, the rates will be based upon the actual homes measured every year. And for 2025, it would be an additional $120 for the per household cost, and then thereafter $180. So this is a wordy slide, but this is the recommendation out of the report. And essentially what it's recommending is that the proposal from Mterra would be endorsed, that staff would finalize the contract prices with Mterra, and that the contract between Mterra and Langley City would be executed and awarded to Mterra. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'll see if there's any questions from council. So we'll start with Councillor Soliam.
I guess this is for staff. Do we have an estimate of the costs of continuing on as we are without changing the method of collection, so people keep the same trash cans that they currently have? Do we have an estimate for what that would cost?
Well, the contract, through the chair to Councillor Soliam, the contract with Mterra is actually it's already been extended 3 years at this point. So that contract has reached the maximum extension, maximum life. That was one of the reasons that we brought forward the contemplated levels of service, where there was the option contained with manual, or there's the option to move to the semi-automated and the totes. The advantage, I think, of having the totes is that the contractor will maintain those totes through the life of the contract. And there's also a consistent sizing and a consistent quality of cart that is being provided. But the decision to move to the totes and the semi-automation was really in discussion with council around the level of service. Thank you.
So I guess another question that might come up is, do you recall the price differential between manual and semi-automatic?
Well, through yourself, Mr. Mayor, the current rate is $156 per household. What was stated in the report is that would be $309.
But we wouldn't be able to get that current rate today.
It's highly unlikely that, you know, we're at the tail end of a contract. The typical experience is that a contractor will go out and purchase new vehicles for the life of the contract. In fact, the city sets a specification that the vehicles have to be of a certain age, less than a certain age. So obviously, the cost of vehicles has risen substantially over the last 10 years.
If I could just follow up.
Yes, please.
I remember our discussion in council a few months ago, but I seem to recall us waiting to see some actual hard numbers for the costs. And so I find it pretty difficult to commit to this, given no real idea of a 7-year contract continuing as it is right now. Again, changing the service was on the table, but I think a lot of it was dependent on, well, what is the actual cost differential, not compared to what we've been currently paying, but what we would be paying going forward. So that information would be really helpful.
Through the chair to Councillor Soliam, as I've stated, the contract is at its end. It's 7 years plus 3. So it's the contractor can walk away at the end of 2024. The only way you would get a price, as you have requested or stated, is that we would have to go to tender, go to market based upon that level of service. And so the level of service was voted on by council, and that was the basis that staff used for the proposal. Thank you.
Uh, so with that, we'll go to Councillor Albrecht, and then if there's more questions, we can circle back. So Councillor Albrecht.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Pollock, for the presentation. I have a couple of questions, and I'll shoot the first one out. So it's for like single family services. We're reducing projection growth and so on north of the Nickel will be taking away a lot of the single family residents and moving that into condos or townhouses. So we'll be reducing services. And you said, I believe you said, and I'm just going to get this confirmed, that the contract will reduce if the number of single family houses reduces. Is that right? Or is the contract the contract?
Through the chair to Councillor Albrecht. I don't believe if I did give that impression, I apologize. I don't believe that was my intent. The cost, whenever the RFP document was issued, there was an estimated number of, not an estimated number, a stated number of dwellings whereby the city would continue to collect garbage and organic waste. It is expected that number will be revisited every year. And the contract has a provision for addressing the number of dwellings that will be collected every year. So it may change in a small way, but every year we will do a count of all the houses that are there. If there's a 2-lot split and there's 2 single family homes, then there'll be an addition to the contract in that case.
Okay. I guess, yeah, like I say, I think it's going to change, and I think we should have some more flexibility in the contract. And I'm just wondering why a 7-year, or is there opt-out language where we can opt out of it or revisit it after a certain number of years?
Through the chair to Councillor Albrecht, 7 years is largely the norm for a contract of this magnitude. The reason being that it aligns with largely the service life of a vehicle for a contract for a vehicle that we used in this case. The contract does not have an early termination clause, but if there would be some mechanism, I'm sure, to revisit that, but there would have to be some agreement with the contractor on that. But there is not an early termination clause built into the contract. The contract is based upon 7 years plus the option for 3 one-year extensions. Thank you.
Okay, and just one more, if you could, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, has Emterra stated that they're a living wage employer?
Through the mayor, I do not believe that that statement has been made. I can confirm that statement.
Is that it, Councillor?
Yeah, just a last comment is I still think that bringing this service in-house is a way that we can provide a better level of service and be able to compete and even provide opportunities to generate revenue in the future. So I'm disappointed that we didn't look at bringing it in-house, but that's our conversation for another day. So thank you, Mr. Pollock.
Thank you.
We'll go over to Councillor White.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Through the mayor to Mr. Pollock, can you speak to any of the cost benefit analysis that was done of insourcing the garbage service compared to contracting it out to Emterra? I know we had some conversation about this in the past, and just wondering if you might be able to just share some of those details as well. Because it is, as Councillor Albrecht mentioned, was one of the options that we explored and had on the table.
Through the chair, through Mayor Hall to Councillor White. That was certainly a discussion that council had. It was enclosed, so I can't necessarily speak to the numbers. I think the costs were higher bringing it in-house, but that information was presented to council and it was incorporated into the level of service that we went to market with.
Did you have a follow-up, Councillor White?
Yes, I did as well. Thank you, Mayor Pahal. And then just a question regarding the tipping fees. You mentioned that some of the differences between the two contracts is in the current contract, we're not dealing with organics, and there are some other fee or other services that are involved in like the tipping costs. What are those costs, or what are those items other than the organics, like taking care of all the organics, because that's going to be added in. So certainly some of the financial expense of $315,000 that we paid for tipping was addressing organics. Do you have an idea of what that split was and what those other services were?
Through the chair to Councillor White, it was the total cost for 2023 was $316,000. I believe the differential was on a slide there. I could share my screen again. The reason that has always been there, the cost to dispose of garbage and the cost to dispose of organics has always been there. The reason that cities, and it's pretty universal that it's done this way, a municipality will choose to be invoiced directly because then there's no markup from the contractor. So the cost comes directly. So it's basically a flow through to the city. But I think if council wishes, I can share my screen again, but there was a slide that did indicate what the so I'm just sharing the current slide. The moment says that the cost to Metro Vancouver in 2023 was $181,000, and the cost to green waste or to answer for the organic waste was $135,000. Thank you.
Was there any further questions?
Yes, just one further question. So we will still be paying those tipping fees on top of this contract, and the organic split will still be a factor, even though we're now paying for the additional organic pickup service in the new proposed contract.
Just for clarity, through the chair, Councillor White, we are currently picking up organics. That level of service has not changed. It is weekly organic collection and it is bi-weekly garbage collection. So that's what the current contract has. That's what we have into the future as well.
Anything else, Councillor White?
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pollock.
Thank you.
Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Please, Ms. Kenny, correct me if I have any other procedural things I need to say, but I would like to make a motion that staff be directed to put out a second RFP to so we find out what the cost is to maintain our current level of service. I feel I don't know, I probably need a seconder before I can discuss it.
Yeah, so let's see if we have a seconder. And so Councillor Soliam seconds it.
My rationale is that we're looking at, I think it was 306 or $309 per household plus the cost of totes. If we're looking at $280, for instance, to maintain our same level of service, including inflation, I think it makes sense to increase the level of service. However, I feel that right now as a member of council, I have one proposal. I wasn't necessarily wholly in favor of changing our level of service without that financial cost comparative. And I think that we are ill-equipped to make a decision without knowing what it will cost to maintain our current level of service in $24.
So I'll add a comment after that. I think, what I'm hearing from council is we want more information. I would be reticent to say, let's issue another RFP without having a proper discussion. So I would vote against what you're saying, and it's not because I don't agree, but my recommendation is that we actually will defer voting on this contract tonight so we can get more information as a council, because I don't think in my mind we're in a place to say, issue an RFP this way or another way. We may want to have staff come back, because certainly I have questions as well. And perhaps, this might be a conversation, since it's contractual, that might happen in a closed meeting, depending on the circumstances as well. So that I would propose, I'll vote against your motion. It's not that I don't agree, but I just don't want to commit us to another course of action without having a full discussion.
Thank you. I think that's fair. I can retract the motion if we seek to defer this after further discussion.
Perfect. So do you agree with that, Councillor Solium? Great. So I'll add some comments to, I guess, my motion. So I'll move, and then I'll just set a date, and if we need to move it again, we can move another date. Also cognizant that we need to have waste removal services as well. We don't want to put our residents in a lurch, but I'll just move that we defer these recommendations to the September 23rd meeting. So that's seconded by Councillor Mack. And just for me, I know that for us, it's sort of the first time we've seen the full price kind of broken down compared to what we have today. And I fully acknowledge that inflation is what it is, but I kind of have questions just around the pricing, inflation. Maybe there's some opportunities to have an informal conversation with the GFL and Terra, not committing to anything on what sort of the different service options look like, just so that we can have a little bit more of a discussion on that. For me, it's also very important to know that this is a living wage employer that is consistent with council policy. I could not vote for a contract in which it wasn't a living wage employer. And then, as maybe Councillor White said and Councillor Albrecht, I know we cannot spin up in-house, garbage removal services in 3 months, but it might also, change the dynamics of that as we plan for the future, seeing that we got a doubling of costs between contracts. So, it might behoove us and have a future discussion on, do we plan in 7 years' time to bring this in-house so we don't get the shock. So I just think there's a lot of unknowns right now. So I'll just ask Mr. Pollock if he wants to provide any comment.
Certainly, that's more than happy to have further discussions. I have been through this scenario before, and fishing for bids and having discussions is all well and good. It's only whenever you create a level of service and a contract that people can be consistent. I have gone through this in other jurisdictions, and it's been very contentious, and expectations were set by certain contractors. It was only whenever it was a level playing field and there was a level of service that was set that a contractor could bid on. The document is probably about 60 pages. And until, the contractor has to be held contractually responsible in order for that price to be binding. Otherwise, it's really a discussion, but certainly happy to have further discussions with council if that's desired.
Sure. So Councillor Solium, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I was just going to ask to Mr. Pollock. I mean, pardon my ignorance, but suppose we did actually do a second RFP. Is the risk that Mterra would retract their current proposal as because the lack of certainty or commitment on our part? I'm just trying to understand the logistics, the process here.
Typically, through the chair, to Councillor Solium, there is a time that a contract or a proposal is set in place to be valid. And if a decision is not made by that point, then the contractor has the ability to remove themselves from the process. For either of any of the contractors to put together a bid, it does require a considerable level of effort for them to do so, to put all the numbers together and to look at the various routes. So they may elect or they may not choose to participate in another RFP. That's the unknown, right? But that's certainly what it would essentially mean is that we'd have to look at, if we wish to go out to market again, I would envisage that we would probably have to collapse this contract or collapse this proposal, create a new tender, a new document, and put that out to market. So that's could occur, but that's really, I think, what the process would be doing, looking moving forward. But certainly, perhaps there can be further discussion at a subsequent meeting.
And thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, and just for clarity too, when would we have to make a call on this contract before it becomes invalid?
I don't have that number in front of me, Mr. Mayor, but the duration is typically around 60 to 90 days. A contractor will, if they think there's a valid reason, honor that period for a little bit longer period. But they're also looking at what their market is going to be and what they have to look for into the future. So the other point that I would make just is that, as I said, at the end of 2024, we are at the end of the contract. Mterra have certainly got a good relationship with the city and a long relationship. They may well extend, but they're under no obligation to do so. Thank you.
That's good. And I think that, council well, I'm speaking for myself now, but, I think we'll likely, need to move forward with an agreement, but it does seem that there is a bunch of questions kind of tonight, just how things are. So hopefully we can come back with some clarity around that. I think that'll give us a little bit more comfort. And if there's any other more fulsome discussions we need to have, I can obviously work with staff to make sure it's all scheduled. And then, it is a matter of public record for those that want. But if council has any questions beyond this meeting, they can, for the sake of a quickness, email me or staff, and then we can make sure that those are addressed at the next meeting. And I do appreciate all the work that goes into these contracts. And I do acknowledge that we've been talking about this for the last little bit. So hopefully we can get some questions answered, get ourselves some comfort, or if we do decide we go in another direction, that we're very, very solid about that and the rationale is iron. So I think 2 weeks is appropriate amount of time here. So with that, I will call the question on the deferment. So all those in favor? Is there any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. So that brings us on to item 8B, which is a draft urban forest management report. So we'll turn it over to Diamond Head Consulting. Thank you, Mr. Pollock.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just do a little brief preamble to the report. 2 things, basically. The first, I would like to use this opportunity to introduce a new member of staff. We've got Perry Brown, who's joined us a couple of months ago as the city's first environmental sustainability coordinator. Perry has done a lot of work in the private sector, working for consultants and contractors, and has been involved on the in helping develop the draft urban forest management strategy. So maybe before we go over to Camille at Diamond Head, maybe Perry could speak quickly, just sort of where the next steps. We're obviously come to council tonight just to have a quick sort of get your thoughts on it before we move forward and go out to the second engagement. But perhaps Perry, for there, you could speak to the next steps, please.
And welcome, and it's great to hear from you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Pollock, and pleased to virtually meet you all. So I'll briefly detail what's been happening with the urban forest management strategy since it was last discussed at June 2023's council meeting. So to date, we furthered the strategy through multiple avenues, such as incorporating public feedback from an open house, public engagement survey, as well as interdepartmental collaboration within the city and with Diamond Head Consulting. As for next steps, we have a phase 2 public engagement survey ready to go live tomorrow, and it will be available until October 8th and of this year, and have been promoting it through the city website so far. We will also be presenting this to the Environmental Sustainability Committee on Thursday this week. There's also potential to bring this to the neighborhood meetups, or now known as Langley City Connects Open House, depending on the level of feedback we receive from the survey and input from council. So once we incorporate the necessary feedback, we hope to finalize and advance this for council endorsement by Q4 of this year. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Over to Camille. Thank you.
Right. Through the mayor, just give me 1 second here to set up my screen sharing. Okay. Hopefully you can all see that all right. So good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Camille Lefrançois. I'm the Environmental Planning Manager with Diamond Head Consulting and also lead consultant on this project. So pleased to see you again this evening for a brief update. I'll be keeping this presentation very short, and we'll be happy to answer any questions about the presentations or things that you've seen in the draft strategy that is attached to tonight's agenda. I'll be briefly covering an overview of our project and progress, building on what was mentioned by Mr. Brown and Mr. Pollock, and then give you a few pointers on highlights of the urban forest management strategies before recapping our next steps. So when it comes to the project overview and progress, Council may recall that our work is taking place on 3 big phases of work. We started working in the spring of last year, really starting by building a good understanding of your context and policies through our background research. And as was mentioned, in June of last year, we had our first phase of engagement, after which we moved into strategy drafting. And I did want to highlight that I did come to this council last April just to give you a brief preview, if you will, of what would be coming to you in the draft strategy. And so we're really coming back to you today, now that you have the draft in hand, to kind of remind you of what's in there and answer any questions. And as was mentioned, we'll be moving straight into our public engagement from there on. So again, without going into too many details, given that those have been presented to you in the past, just reminding Council that, of course, as part of the content that you'll see in the draft strategy, we've put a lot of work into establishing a baseline for the urban forest in terms of current conditions so that you can track progress and compare with current conditions. And that included mapping your 2021 canopy cover, which we found to be at 17% citywide. And you can see that in green on the map here. Part of the analysis that's included in the draft plan really focuses on understanding distribution and its implications in terms of equity, access, ecosystems, and impacts of land uses and so forth. In addition to that, as was mentioned, we reached nearly 300 people in our phase 1 engagement. And again, that really helped us build a strong vision for what the community wanted to see the urban forest look like in Langley City moving forward, as well as getting a better understanding of aspirations and concerns. And both of those pieces of work really came into play in terms of the content that you're seeing today in the draft strategy. So with those steps completed, as was mentioned, we're now moving into phase 2 engagement. And with the information we hear from the public as well as from council, we'll be making some updates before we come back to you with a final strategy ready, hopefully for adoption. So a couple of very brief highlights on the urban forest management strategy itself. You may recall this from a presentation from last spring, But really, this plan, in addition to building a strong baseline from where we're starting from, is really focused on the future and setting a vision for where we're going with the urban forest. And that also includes setting a canopy cover target, which can give us a good metric to compare and track progress over time for implementation. And the vision and targets are supported by 4 goals that provide a little bit of additional details on what we mean in terms of what we're trying to achieve. And then you've got 10 strategies and 33 actions that are really providing the details on how we anticipate we'll get there. And so again, as a reminder on the draft vision, in particular, that statement was really built using information that we collected from your community in phase 1 engagement. So that included things like the benefits that community members who participated in that engagement thought were most important for the urban forest to provide, the types of trees and ecosystems they thought were particularly important, and how trees should contribute to public spaces in particular. And so the vision statement is intended to be somewhat broad, but still directed so that we have a good understanding of, again, what our aim is here. One piece that council would not have seen because it had not been drafted at this time, the last time I presented to you, is the canopy cover target. And in fact, you'll see that the draft strategy includes 2 targets, a baseline target and an aspirational one. So just to begin with the baseline target, this is taking you from our latest data from 2021 all the way to 2046, which was the time horizon set for this strategy at the onset of the project. And with this baseline target, we're aiming to move from 17% canopy to 20%. And this baseline target is essentially intended to take a good look at what we understand of your development patterns and impacts on canopy cover in the past, and then tracking those forward to better understand what we anticipate might change, and then layer onto that what we think we can achieve once we implement the actions that are included in the draft strategy. And so this baseline target is really intended to set something that we believe you can achieve by this 2046 timeline once you've implemented the action plan. And so this would include a number of trees planted annually. In the plan, you've got some details about those more regularly planted annual trees, if you will, and that includes on public land, both city planted and developer planted trees, and then on private land, both developer planted as well as voluntarily planted trees. And then in addition to those, there's also a number of spot occasional tree planting that we've put into those assumptions related to things like big projects, for example, the SkyTrain expansion. And so in addition to this baseline target, which we believe, again, would be achievable with implementing the strategy, we also wanted to set a more aspirational target, which is going up to 31% by 2050. Of course, this would require additional resources. And so certainly might be a more ambitious one, but nonetheless would be something that would take you towards the change that's recommended by Metro Vancouver for Langley City in their report on 2020 canopy cover and impervious surfaces. So something that could be targeted with additional funding opportunities and so forth. In terms of the goals that are included in the strategy, which are really driving those big actions that will be important to achieving the targets, our first goal includes actions that are focused on the protection and enhancement of your urban forest. Whereas goal 2 is really focused on managing the city assets, so your urban forest assets on city land. And then goal 3 includes a number of actions that are focused on partnership. Again, we know that a lot of your canopy cover is growing on private land, and we also know that your community has already been and will continue to be an important part of achieving a healthy urban forest. So you'll find a number of actions focused on that under this goal. And then our final and 4th goal is really focused on monitoring progress. So that would include, for example, tracking canopy cover over time so that you can compare it over towards the achievement of your target, and then adapting to changing conditions in our natural environment and urban environment. And I'll close this section by just mentioning that we did shortlist a list of 6 actions that we think could be quick start. So perhaps lowest hanging fruit, things that could be used to start implementation of the urban forest management strategy once it is adopted to get the ball rolling. And then finally, just in terms of next steps that council can expect, I just wanted to recap what was mentioned by Mr. Brown. So again, our online survey is set to launch as of tomorrow for about a month. We are meeting with your Environmental Sustainability Committee later this week, and the city may take this project as well to the Connects Open House. And we'll be using all of this input to finalize the strategy before we bring it back to this council for adoption. And with that, I'll close it and turn it over for questions.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I'll see if we have any questions from council. I certainly have some, but we'll go to Councillor Wallace first, and then we'll go to Councillor Mack.
Thank you for the report. There was a lot to it and a lot of information, and I look forward to it coming to the Environmental Sustainability Committee this Thursday. In regards to accessing more feedback in regards to maybe our Langley School District and getting that survey out to maybe some environmental groups and classes to see what we can get from them.
Thank you. Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. I just wanted to express my support for maintaining our assets and specifically like our trees. It's really important. So that's one thing. I did hear a little bit of apprehension surrounding a tree bylaw at our community meetings last year. So I think we need to connect a little bit more with our residents to find out what are the points of concern, what are the challenges? Is it pushback that they don't want any dictate for anything they'll do on their land, or are there some nuances that we could kind of try to find a middle ground on so that we can protect our tree canopy and find a place where, you know, people are happy. So I wanted to voice that. And then on page 6 of the report, it was framed as total service value offset by maintenance cost. I thought it'd be really interesting when we go to the public if we have our actual budget for maintaining the trees versus the service value offsets, what I have written down here. I think that would be a really interesting number, and I wonder how they would actually balance out. So that's what I wanted to express. And then thank you for all of your work thank you.
Yeah, and I don't mean to restate what Councillor Mack said, but sort of like, you know, for every dollar invested in a tree, how much dollars do you get back, right? That would be really, like she said, a very interesting and powerful number, I think, to share with the community. Is there any other questions from council? Councillor White.
I thank you very much, Mayor Pahal, through the mayor to Camille. A question regarding just the matrix and how you ascertain a standard aspirational number that you presented to us at 31%. Is there an aspirational level that other metropolitan areas are working towards? And if so, how is that kind of established?
Through the mayor to Councillor White. That's a great question. So the number that you see in the draft strategy at the moment is coming from Metro Vancouver. So Metro Vancouver, in their most recent report on the evolution of canopy cover across the region, also made recommendations for municipalities for what they hoped they could reach in the future as to support their 2050 target of 40% canopy cover across the urban containment boundary. And so that is where this specific number is coming from, is that same increase that they're proposing. They have a slightly different baseline without getting too deep into the weeds. So we've applied essentially the change, so the increase from your current baseline. In terms of the broader question on that front, are there like standard targets that communities are setting? That's also a great question. In the past, there were some big US-based organizations that set recommendations for specific canopy cover targets based on your ecosystems. In the Pacific Northwest, I believe they used to recommend 40%, but they have moved away from that because they recognize that targets should be set to reflect better the local land uses, population density, and a lot of factors that are hard to assess at a one size fits all. So essentially the recommendations in terms of best practices in the field nowadays are to essentially consider both what the local ecosystems are like. For instance, targets wouldn't be the same in prairie environments, but also getting a good understanding of what your local context in terms of density, current and future land uses and so forth are like in terms of opportunities for canopy growth.
Just a follow-up question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for that. I guess part of my question is, you know, we're fully developed. We have a lot of increasing density that's taking place. You know, the 10% or 11% gap that seems to be there, it does certainly look very aspirational, but you know, part of my concerns when I see that, and I'm very supportive of our green spaces and our cover, but at the same time balancing other kind of impacts on infrastructure and what that would mean would be a big concern. You know, I think in the future as well, is how would that be impacting our infrastructure as well? So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? So I'm not seeing any. Just I guess kind of a follow-up. I know Mr. Johansson was speaking once about how we could achieve tree canopy growth in high density areas. So is that spoken to when you talk about the updating our design manuals, policies, etc.? So that's like, do we have sort of a gut feeling that that's possible, or is it truly like pie in the sky?
To the mayor, certainly the baseline target is one that we've modeled with, you know, number crunching, looking at what we anticipate development would look like all the way to 2046, what we think impacts might be in terms of tree retention, tree loss, and then layering onto that exactly what you're pointing out, some of the policy changes that we're recommending. So we do believe that that number is very much achievable. When it comes to that aspirational target, it would certainly require a bigger effort, and I think that would be broader than, well, first of all, yeah, it would certainly require more planting on private land and probably would require some planting on structure, given that you have fairly dense areas where you might be looking at planting trees on building a little more, and then probably a much bigger effort on the city side. So certainly the aspirational target is well named in that regards, I think would require a fair bit more impact or effort, if you will.
Yeah, and I guess just following up too, I know you had sort of the equity tree heat map, for lack of a better term, which I guess is related to actual urban heat. It's very bad in areas obviously that are industrial areas right now. You know, with the generally again, with that, as we're modeling it out, do you expect that to become more equitable and like get out of the like really bad to be maybe more akin to some of our other neighborhoods? Like, are we focusing on those areas as well with specific kind of ideas on what staff can run with?
Yeah, to the mayor, there's kind of two aspects to that. So certainly as, you know, development occurs, which we know with things like SkyTrain expansion, we're already anticipating. Certainly you already have good policy, and we hope that this strategy can help even strengthen those policies for new development that might replace some of the industrial areas to look greener. So that's, you know, the private side of that equation, I think is addressed well with existing and recommended policy updates. And then on the public side, certainly one of the things that we've focused on in terms of the actions for where the city is seeking to plant trees is that we look at focusing planting in areas that have less tree cover. I think the one thing to note, which will be to look out for in terms of the city, is that typically the cost of planting in those areas are much higher because you might need to create the planting spots. But with that said, there's quite a bit of funding that's been released just this year, this summer, in fact, by the federal government for municipalities to apply for tree planting that can cover some of those costs of creating planting sites as well. So I think there'll also be good opportunities for the municipality to leverage some funding that's available out there.
That's really good. I didn't know they would pay for some of the what you need for an urban tree. So on page 38 of I think it's page 38 of your report, it talks about the 3 items that would have the biggest impact. So that's updating our policies and regulations, proactively managing our tree assets, and planting more trees. Is that covered in our quick start, or how do we, I mean, some of it seems to be and some of it isn't. So could you explain kind of that?
Yeah, to the mayor, that's also a great question. And to some extent, the quick start are definitely up for revising. There's kind of two thoughts there. So the big impact action include a couple actions typically related to, some big areas where we think change could be achieved. Some of those are easier, I think, to put into action in terms of resource investment in the short term than others. For example, developing an inventory of your assets might take a little bit of time. Increasing tree planting is something that you can start now, but you might be able to ramp up more as time goes. So when we selected the quick start action, our thought was that we might be able to select some of the things that cover a bit of those big impact actions, but also ones that might be lowest hanging fruit just to get things going. With that said, if there are specific actions on those lists that council or community want to see prioritized for start, that's absolutely something that we could revise for the final strategy.
Well, I guess my only thought is how because we're talking about asset management in general. So is that, I know you just can't snap a finger and have all your trees inventoried, and I know that we have staff limitations, but could it be phased in, or is there any language on that so we can just get started at some point? Because that seems important. It already speaks to updating the policies, so I see that. I know planting more trees is just the money thing, so I'm not too worried about that having to show up as an action. We just know that it's something we need to include. So I guess I'd really like to see how I can sort of strategize the asset inventory part, and maybe if there's ways we can incorporate it into our existing workflows. Just a couple more questions, and then we'll go back to other members of council. In the policy development in our quick wins, do we have anything around like, accidentally nicking a tree that's been identified as significant, or the practices today where I think is the things that I see when I talk to people in the community is they're most concerned about someone buys a property, they clear the lot from, side to side and, north to south, and that's that. So do you envision policy that would say that's not a way forward in the city? And was that in our quick start?
Yeah, to the mayor, there's kind of two pieces there. So on the private side of things, your main leverage there would be a tree bylaw. And so that would be the most straightforward way outside of your environmentally sensitive areas for the city to regulate whether or not a person purchasing a property can clear their trees. And so given that we anticipate that's something that the community will want to do some consultation on, we didn't put that in the quick start. That being said, you could start quickly with your engagement on that process if that was something that was a high priority, and that could be, when you are talking about phasing, that could be potentially one way to do that. And then the other piece that I would mention is then on the city side of things, there's certainly some updates in terms of their design criteria and some of the subdivision development servicing updates that would help on the protection of city trees that I think are at least in parts included in the quick start. So the public side a little bit better, the private most likely would come through private tree bylaw.
And obviously I'll leave it to staff, but just my suggestion is if there's a place to start on the tree bylaw, it's not necessarily preventing the owner of a strata property or like a strata or established strata or established owner from managing trees. But the one that seems to really, and I see it, is again, when it's the new or redevelopment, seems to be maybe if there's a place to focus first, it might be that. And then talk to the community, obviously, and see what they want, but that's probably the better course there. My final item is just Hunter Park. You noted that it was cleared to create greens, play space in the report. It was actually cleared because of laminated root rot, so we probably want to update that because certainly council of the day, of which I was a part of, did not, endorse clearing the lot just to clear it. It was because of laminated root rot, and we didn't want that rot to spread to the trees in that neighborhood. So thank you. So we'll go to Councillor. Oh, actually, maybe is it all right if we go to Mr. Pollock? He might have some thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, just to build on the comments that were made there, the plan obviously is one that lays out a strategy for 30 odd years. I think what I would foresee us doing is to work through the development of the final strategy, look at some of these issues, then come back to you with an implementation plan that will also become part of the financial plan for next year. To, if it is a tree bylaw, not saying one way or the other, but if that were the case, there's obviously resources required to that, and that's quite a discussion to have around some of the issues that have been mentioned. So the intent would be is whenever we develop a strategy that we will certainly come back to council and then pick out those items that are high priority short term, and then start working our way through that and have that ongoing discussion as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Through the mayor to staff, I was just wondering, the comment about funding that's opened up for tree planting piqued my interest. So I was wondering if there's any direction that needs to be given from council for staff to take a peek at that, or potentially if that work is already underway.
Through the chair to Councillor Mack, certainly our park staff are aware of some of those issues, and we would work with Camille and other groups in Metro Vancouver to sort of make best use. We're very good at trying to get as much free money as we can. We're certainly open to that. So we'd be open to pursuing any options to get money and funds that would allow us to expand that program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you to the mayor, and the mayor answered or asked some of the questions I wanted to ask, so thank you. In regards to our one-way street, I believe we will be getting, I can't remember the number of trees that will be planted, so that will definitely help the downtown area. I'm just wondering, Camille, if there are examples in other municipalities, or, you know, not even here in the lower mainland, but, you know, maybe across Canada, where they've been able to, you know, when you talk about redevelopment, build green infrastructure, so trees or greenage on buildings, but plus in the industrial area. If there's just some examples that you could share with us in moving forward. And sorry, and then just one further, on 42, you talk about NGOs, and I was just wondering if you could add the Langley Field Naturalists, or you have had any communication with them.
Through the mayor to Councillor Wallace. So yes, to answer your first question, which was about examples of other municipalities planting trees, particularly in industrial areas, I would probably have to think further about that, and we could have some comments for the Environment Committee in terms of specific examples. One that comes to head that we've spoken with many times that applies both for industrial as well as commercial is some communities, and I believe including the township of Langley, very nearby, actually include a number of trees required per parking stall. Usually those are best implemented if you have good soil volume requirements that accompany them. So typically that would, in industrial areas, the two things that I can think of that I've seen off the top of my head would include, planting related to parking, and then buffers, certainly, and making sure that you have setbacks that allow for plenty of space for large sized trees to grow. But we could certainly come back with some more specific examples than that. And then, yes, certainly per your request on the Langley Field Naturalists, we can certainly add them to the list. I'd have, again, to look at my notes to see it last year whether we had engaged with them specifically or not. But yes, certainly that's something that we can absolutely mention in the strategy. Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Pollock.
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor, just to Councillor Wallace, just to confirm that on the Fraser One-Way, we're actually planting just short of 90 trees along that section, including both the silva cells and structural soil underneath the ground as well. So there's going to be a significant change in that area in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johansson.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to briefly chime in. when we're looking at redevelopment around SkyTrain and of course in our downtown core and, in areas along Logan and eventually up into Willowbrook and Langley bypass, which are, typically industrial, commercial areas with very little tree cover. Those are prime opportunities as they redevelop to add additional tree cover. For example, we got a rezoning application will be coming forward for a large site where the number of trees on site are going to go up by 5 times. So it's a very positive aspect of redevelopment, especially as new trees and green spaces and plazas are put in. And if you want to see that in action, and it's because that, this is the area that we look at all the time, because we're looking at examples and seeing how we can apply those within our context here. Is, for example, the new transit-oriented developments in Toronto, for example, were previously industrial commercial areas, which are basically one giant hunk of concrete, are being redeveloped into transit-oriented neighborhoods with parks and plazas and street trees. And it's definitely making a big difference in terms of getting more trees, reducing the heat island effect. And you can actually see the change over time looking at Google Earth. So it's something that we can definitely do here to support the implementation of the tree bylaw. And as we move forward, OCP amendments and updates to our subdivision and servicing bylaw, we're going to be obviously looking at the tree management strategy to affect what's in there. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we've had our first pass here at the draft plan as a council. My understanding is it's going to the Environment Sustainability Committee, then it will be coming back to council again. So that's really great for that process. We do have a recommendation that council receive the draft urban forest management strategy for information. Would anybody like to move that? Moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor White. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. It's on to correspondence. On to 10A. I guess I'll turn this over to Mr. Johansson, perhaps. Are we considering this already?
So item 10A, just let me check my
inclusion of home health care as an eligibility for intermunicipal mobile business.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we would be. Yeah. No,
Is there any action you need from council? Do we need to refer this to you, or is it already in the queue?
Yeah, it's something that we're looking at the staff level, and be following up with our staff on that.
Do you need us to refer it or just receive it?
I think receive is fine, and we'll follow up on it.
Thank you
It's
so
up
much.
to council, but we'll follow up on it for sure.
We trust you. So I'll move that we receive this item for information, seconded by Councillor Mack. Any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, carried unanimously. Item 10B, this is a type 3 amendment. I'd just like to move that we refer it to staff like we have in the past for them just to provide comments to Metro Vancouver. So if there's a seconder, seconded by Councillor Mack. Again, from what I understand, Mr. Johansson and Councillor Albrecht may know more, but it's sort of, I think, a standard thing that's been happening in that Surrey area for a while. So
that's correct.
Yeah, I would only flag that we're potentially losing a little bit of industrial property, and it's harder to come by as the years go on. So
perfect. Thank you, Councillor. So with that, I think I am getting tired right now. Did I move it yet, Mr. Scanny? Okay, good. So I will move that we refer the Metro 2050 Type 3 Proposed Amendment, City of Surrey, 7800 128th Street to Council, seconded by Councillor Mack. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. We are at the end of the meeting. Thank you all for being with us. I know it's a little bit new for some, a little bit rusty for some of us doing this virtual format. So I appreciate everybody's patience as we got through this and with some of the technical difficulties. So with that, I'll move that the meeting adjourn, seconded by Councillor James. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. I hope everybody has an excellent evening. I'll see you. Bye for now.